Almost everybody in Ghana today aspires to own landed property for one purpose or the other. It could be for residential purposes, for business purposes, or industrial purposes, as a subset of business. Today on Law Express, we discuss buying immovable property. As usual, I have with me two private legal practitioners to do justice to the topic. We have Mr. Kweku Osei-Asare and Philip Edem Kuchianyu. My name is Noella Seidu. You just tuned into Law Express. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Some of these landowners, through their frequent court trials, they are learning some of these things, and I realized that some people put in the indenture that if after 2 years you fail to develop the land,
they can
repossess the land.
So those who are in the habit of, you've been served with an application for an injunction and you're developing the land, and all of a sudden they go and rent lights and they are working day and night quickly to finish the project so that they make useless the application, they could go in for contempt.
And also because of the land tenure system in Ghana, there are areas where lands belong to families and not the stools.
Yeah.
You could go to such an area, for instance, the Pram, Dawenya, Ningo areas.
Family lands
there belong to the family. People always fall into the trap of buying from the
But
stool.
you see,
often people only think of lawyers
when there's trouble.
But like the old adage goes, a stitch in time saves nine.
Here. One may wonder what immovable property is, or the term immovable property. It's basically permanent or fixed property in the form of land or a building that cannot move around.
Right. It's land, basically, and land includes everything.
Yes, on it.
Anything that's fixed permanently on it. So, but I don't even know how we're using the term immovable property because people know land and people want to acquire it. It's probably the best asset that,
buying land.
People, yes.
Okay.
It's relatively stable, so, and in this country, the value keeps going up, so it is indeed.
It's a desirable investment.
It is a desirable investment.
One thing that keeps appreciating all the time, if you'd save in the currency, the CD to depreciate, people like to. My dad would say he would prefer to buy a bag of cement. It's a better investment or even saving in a bank.
So you identify a piece of land that you're interested in and you want to invest in. What should be the first thing that comes to your mind in the process of acquiring such property?
Well, I think that the first thing is what you need the land for. You need to ask yourself, and it could be for residential purposes, for business purposes. You want to put up a factory, or you just want to keep it. You want to do farming, whatever. The primary consideration is it what's the land use scheme of the area?
Okay.
Because, in this country we have the phenomenon of the seasonal breaking down of houses, destruction of houses in what we call waterways, for instance.
Yes.
And it's a very big feature of this because in acquiring the land that you wish to live on, you probably have not bothered to contact town and country planning to see what the land scheme or the land use scheme is. So it's a primary consideration.
So we are looking at checking to see if it's an industrial area, if it's a residential area, and whether whatever development or investment you want to embark on suits the grand design for that particular area.
All lands have been zoned and mapped out by the Town and Country Planning Department. And so you should know what use you can put a particular land to. Else you'll be buying land in a residential area and you may have an idea to put up a factory, which may not sit well with the use of the land. And that is a problem right there. You may not be able to do what you intend to do with the land. So I think it's very important. In fact, it should be your first consideration, the use to which you are going to put the land. That will dictate where you should even get the land. So
Okay.
Areas are demarcated: industrial lands, residential areas, and then the like.
Okay.
Let me add. In addition to the land use scheme, you have to do other things like soil test, for instance. You know, it's very, very important. Whatever you're going to use the land for, it's very important to do a soil test. You know, these are not things that people usually do.
I was thinking the soil test will come when you have approached the owners, and then you can go on the land.
Well, it's true.
Maybe as
it's
part
true.
of your
I'm just thinking of the general, the general things that you should be thinking.
You should think about ahead, so you plan it.
You know, like you're saying, you've identified the land. It fits into the use to which you want to put it. Now, the next thing is proper identification of the boundaries of your land. And in that regard, I'd suggest that anybody at all who wishes to buy a piece of land must think about getting a surveyor on board, your own surveyor, to go to the land so that you're sure that the land that eventually appears on paper as the land you've bought is actually the land that
I am thinking that after you've seen the land and you've decided that you want this land, maybe the next thing is to find out who owns the land. Perhaps the person may have already advertised. So you start talking. Then they can give you their title and what evidence they have to prove that title.
I think basically what we are talking about is doing proper due diligence when you want to acquire any parcel of land. In fact, there's no standard procedure for acquiring land in Ghana. Yes. So you may have, there are a lot of risk involved in acquiring
But we are trying to see how we can cut down that risk.
Yes, exactly. That is why we are having this discussion and then trying to inform the public on the steps. And the first thing under due diligence is usually to investigate the ownership of the land. You have to do a proper investigation of the ownership of the land. And it's been said that the best form of investigation would be to actually visit the sites, talk to people in the neighborhood.
That's correct.
Because you could have anybody standing somewhere in Accra tell you, I own this huge tract or parcel of land somewhere, and then let's go probably have fictitious documents covering the land. So you need to do a proper investigation of the owners of the land. Who are the rightful owners of the land? And also, because of the land tenure system in Ghana, there are areas where lands belong to families and not the stools. You could go to such an area, for instance, the Pram, Dawenya, Ningo areas. Family lands there belong to the families. People always fall into the trap of buying from the stool.
But you see, the best way to go about this thing is first to find a lawyer. I mean, it helps. Most people will call a lawyer only after they've started negotiations. They've run into problems. Maybe they've already invested money and they're not getting the land. Or they are there and somebody else shows up. That's the only time they go. So in order to avoid all of these things, the first point of call, in my opinion, will be to find somebody who is knowledgeable enough to help you go through all these steps. But it's still important for us to know, for us to let them know also, that even when you find a lawyer, these are some of the things the information he would demand or want to know.
I completely agree with that. Most of the time, lawyers only come in as troubleshooters. But, many of these considerations, and probably that's one of the reasons why people don't even bother to get a lawyer first, because the idea is that once you get a lawyer on board, it's going to delay
the process.
And
the cost.
But and certainly there will be some cost added. But it is key. It's key to get a lawyer who understands the process and will take you through the process.
Yes.
Because lawyer serves as an interface between you and then the person, the potential owner. And then also between you and then regulatory authorities.
Yes.
And then, sometimes, some of the considerations that the person might not even think are important. It's for a person with a professional eye to look at it and then draw one's attention to that. So getting a lawyer is key. Once you identify, a piece of land, you probably should get a lawyer first.
Yeah.
And probably if we're doing a checklist, then probably that's second in the checklist.
Yes. So talking about title, there are many ways to prove it. Some people have land that is not registered. Others have land that is already registered. It's easier to take the registered land documents and then go and then do a search to see if it falls and if the person asserting that this is his land really owns the land. But with situation of unregistered land, I think it points now to witnesses and whether you're talking to the right people, are you at the right place? Sometimes, that's where it gets tricky.
It is. It is, but even before you get to the point where you are doing your searches,
yes,
like I said, the thing is, proper identification of the land is good. You need to be sure that this is the piece of land I'm getting. You do your own site plan, you make your own site plan, and then you can do your search on the basis of the site plan you have.
I said that because I was thinking that you can just walk onto somebody's land in this town and start taking your site plan.
Absolutely. I mean, the assumption is that you see a piece of land, probably somebody introduced you to the piece of land.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that you have potentially a vendor.
Made some contacts with somebody, an agent.
Potentially have a vendor.
Or somebody, yes.
When you're talking about the process, often what you do after, you've identified the land, you met your vendor, is you're probably going to enter into a sort of a contract for the sale of the land.
Contract for sale.
Which will probably outline the stages that you go through. So yes, that is important. But I really wanted to make this point because, I have had the experience where a piece of land that was bought, piece of registered land that was bought, was actually 4 kilometers away from the physical land that we had been shown. And
had you developed on the one that you bought?
No, luckily enough, we were able to sort it out before, the person.
Any major thing
occurred. But then that is the problem that you could have, if you don't properly identify the land.
By identification, you mean taking your own quantity surveyor to survey the place take dimensions.
Take dimensions and then be sure.
For you to superimpose on the general, it's site plan for the area.
It's absolutely important.
To be sure that it's every single part of it is captured.
I think it's very important because I'm also involved in a case where clearly looking at the site plan that the plaintiff claims to have, it falls way off. Yeah, so now he's conducted searches at various departments of the Lands Commission, and all the searches have returned negatively, and he thinks that yes, the defendant is lying, the defendant doesn't have title. But I think it's because of the site plan that he has. So yes, when you are given a site plan as part of the indenture, that it's also important for you to get a surveyor, take him to the place, let him map out the land and make sure that it tallies with what you have on your site plan.
Yeah, it happens quite often where sometimes you find two sides fighting over land or in dispute over, only to realize later that the land really they are both scrambling for does not belong to any of them because their dimensions do not tally in any way to that particular one. So this whole thing of due diligence is actually the main thing about purchasing the land, aside being able to pay for it.
It's the key. And like we said, getting a lawyer to help you enter into some form of contract of sale.
Yes.
Because what lawyers do is that you don't pay all the amount. At least there's an agreed amount that is paid up front, and you hold the rest in escrow.
Yeah.
And then as and when things check out, then yes, you go through the stages fully before you finally make payment. So by the time you are parting with most of the money, you know that you have something concrete in your hands.
So, Kweku, you've come to this place where you've done your site plan. You have agreed that it tallies with what they're trying to sell to you. You mentioned the issue of a contract for sale. Now, this contract for sale is important to let them know that you can dictate what goes into it. It's the agreement between the two of you that you reduce into writing. And therefore, you shouldn't just sit around and wait for the vendor to throw something at you.
Well, the contract for sale sets out a roadmap.
Yes.
You need to agree on some essentials. One, the land you're buying, and then the price of the land. Very important. Beyond that, you set out a roadmap because you need to convince yourself, because the land is not just something you buy off the street.
Yeah.
You need to convince yourself that what you're buying, you're buying it from the proper person, and that you're buying, something that there are other considerations, any restrictions on the land, etc., etc. So it sets out a time frame within which you conduct your searches. You convince yourself that, okay, now everything is above board.
You could even include your terms of payment.
You include terms of payment and how this whole transaction is going to work out. So that's at a very early stage when you've identified the land and then you're happy with it and you want to. It's
actually like the next most important document in the whole transaction, if you ask me, because it protects both parties.
Yes.
Nobody can, I mean, if somebody breaches that, then it means that you don't have a deal.
Yes.
And also, if the seller or the vendor decides to sell to another party, you can use that to insist that the court gives an order for specific performance, which means that the person must sell to you.
That is true. That is true. In fact, it's very important to get that done right from the beginning. No, that's why we are underscoring the importance of getting a lawyer involved right from the start. You are able to put in terms that will help both parties, the vendor and the purchaser, so that you can protect each other's interests. Because there are so many disputes with land these days. In fact, you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful in purchasing land today.
So we come to this place after your contract for sale. Basically, you just follow that. That's what now guides the process till the very end. And then you get your documents sorted. But there's this issue about land that has not already been demarcated.
Okay. Well, if you say land that has not already been demarcated, then probably you're thinking that you go into an area, a virgin area, where,
maybe for farming purposes.
There are no utilities, there are no access roads, etc., etc.
Yes.
That also comes with some risk. That also comes with some risk. Not in terms of, not in
double sales or
those ones you have to watch out for. Notwithstanding. But there's always the risk that one day a road is going to come through your land.
You may have to make way.
Exactly.
Or they may want that place for a hospital. Or something that the community can use.
And that fits into, right from the outset, making sure that there's a land use scheme for the area.
So what if you get there and they're like, we haven't yet made plans for that area. It's really in the outskirts.
Well,
what happens? And like you said, there are no utilities, there's no electricity, nothing.
What the TNC does, China Country Planning people, what they do often is to work with the landowners to develop a scheme for the area, even before they start selling. Sometimes in their eagerness, they sell it to you before they're done with the scheme. But then that's when, eventually, if you go and you ask them for maybe a permit, that's when you start having problems.
Very well. I think it's now okay for us to go for a commercial break.
Right.
When we come back, we go further into some of the problems that come up as a result of land deals gone bad. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Still to come on Law Express.
The consideration for the court is that at the time that the person was doing the development, if there's evidence
that he knew,
that you sat back and
allow
allow this person to do that, then clearly you cannot come back seeking to claim it.
Let's not take away the fact that there are some people who know actually, but then they want that particular land and they must have it. And they have the financial muscle. So he's going to buy the land and wait. Whenever you come up, they can always settle it.
Well, I would not discount that. But
well, yes.
If you want to acquire land, you should have a lawyer. If yourself you're a lawyer, it's cool, or a family lawyer, or someone who could go through everything and make sure. Because nowadays in Ghana, you can't just trust everybody, and therefore there should be some kind of legal backing to whatever signature you append on any form. so that you don't have problems in future.
The best thing or the best way for you to acquire land is to see a chief or any estate developers. You know, they can help you. Those are the right channels to pass through to get a land.
I think the first thing I would do is I have to try to search the owner of the land, the true owner of the land. If I'm buying it from an individual or from the chiefs who happen to be the landowners particularly, I have to go and do a search at the lands department or the survey department to make sure that the one that I'm buying the land from is truly the owner.
First of all, you go and check the land with the... If I want to buy a piece of land, first of all, I'll do what I'll go and check the land that they want to sell for me. Then secondly, I'll ask of the landowner, is it for a kin or maybe a family or something. So I'll make sure I'll find out the real owner of the land. Then I'll get the site plan of the land. Then I'll go and check at the land department. So if truly the name set on it is true, before I'll pay any amount to the owner. And even that one, we don't pay all, you pay some, then you start to do something, and later on, if there's no problem on it, then you pay the rest.
Yeah, what I know, acquiring land is different from way back. You see, there are a lot of companies like estate developers who will come direct to your office and tell you what to do if you want to acquire land. But way back, you just carry money, meet some kin or somebody who will get you a land, and then you go to the lands or whatever to get your papers. So if I want to acquire land, I think I'll go to a company like some estate developer or something, and then also get a lawyer to back me, because we've seen cases whereby people acquire land and then they have issues even with the chiefs that sell the lands to them. They end up selling it to a lot of people. So I think if I want to buy a land, I'll get a lawyer to advise me on what to do.
Yeah, definitely. There are two processes that you have to follow. The first one is either someone tells you that he has a land for sale, or you go to the chief's palace to ask for a land to be sold to you. Either of them. When you are giving the land, first you have to take a site plan of the land and then search at the lands department to see whether the land is not titled or it is not registered as government property or it's not already been sold to somebody. After that, then you see a supervisor who comes in to plot the land and then use it, send it to the secretariat of the chief's palace, where an indenture will be made out of the site plan that you have set so far for you. Then from then you have to take the indenture to the lands registry department, where it will be registered, titled and deed. After that, there will be a publication for about 14 days. If nobody comes up to raise any objection, then you'll be gazetted and given a certificate. That is usually what someone should do if he really wants to have a land that is genuine.
Oh, actually, when it comes to land, wow, I don't know, I don't even have any clue about getting a land, but I think the experts when it comes to land, especially when you go to a land commission, you can get someone there to advise you on the kind of land you want to buy. There are so many agencies in town, like the estate developers, who are into lands. Even without one, you know, it's very, very costly when it comes to land. But acquiring land, I think it's the best thing to do is to look for an expert, like the lawyers, and go to a land commission to find out if you can get someone who can assist you in purchasing a land.
When I buy the land and somebody also comes that the land belongs to him or something else, that's why we have the judicial service. You need to bring out your papers that entails that the land is yours, and you go to the court and just sort yourselves out.
Definitely, you have to consult a lawyer, but lawyers usually come in when it gets to the land title, the registry, where you have to find out the deed, whether it is stool land or whether it is owned by a family. That is where the lawyer comes in. But really, if you want to find out whether the land is genuine or not, you have to search at the lands department with the site plan before you make even any payment.
It's important to acquire a lawyer when getting a piece of land. In case of any legal issues, he will take care of it.
Yeah, definitely. There are so many litigations, legal issues involved. So you need the assistance of a lawyer to help you acquire land.
Not really necessary to consult a lawyer unless it gets to a point that the first owner happens to sell it to a second person where these legal issues has to come in. That is where you have to go for a lawyer if it's necessary.
We've mentioned title, we've mentioned contracts of sale and other things. I think we should explain to the viewer at this point, what is title? Just somebody who just tuned in may be wondering, what is title?
Title basically refers to your interest in the land. What sort of interest is it? And by interest you mean your ownership? Yes, your claim to the land. Ownership. Yes. I mean proprietary ownership. You know, in Ghana, for instance, land is virtually held by families and then stools. The states can also compulsorily acquire under the law some. And by compulsory acquisition, you're talking about they see a piece of land, they know it to be good for maybe a hospital or a school or something that the entire population can benefit from. They give notice to whoever was the owners, and then they pay some compensation, and then they take over that land. That's correct. They have to pay compensation that is adequate, fair, and just. And, I mean, all that. Yeah. Yes. Now, besides that, individuals can also own land. Yes. So, whenever you want to acquire a parcel of land, you have to make sure of the title of the person from whom you are acquiring the land. Yes. Because there's this maxim that says "Nemo dat quod non habet." Basically means you can't give what you don't have. Yes. Yes. So if you purchase land from someone who has not got the proper interest or the appropriate interest in that land, who doesn't own the land, you may be acquiring, or have the right to sell that land to you. Yes. You may be acquiring nothing. You may be acquiring nothing. So it's important to always investigate the title of the persons who own the land, and sometimes you can do this through searches at the Lands Commission. That's like we earlier discussed. If the land is registered, yes, through searches at the Land Commission, you are able to tell that, yes, this land belongs to. Talking to the principal elders, where it's a family. Family, exactly. Talking to the stool head, if it's a stool. And like I always say, the best is always to go to the neighborhood and also speak to people who have acquired, similar parcels of land or adjoining property, land, yes. And then they can really direct you. Sometimes you may even be surprised that these artisans, they have very, very good knowledge or source of knowledge. For some people actually buy land and ask them to occupy it just to guard the thing. Exactly. So you find a mechanic shop on a prime land, and the main purpose of that is so that nobody encroaches. That's very important, because if you buy it from the wrong source, you may be acquiring nothing, like I've always said. Let's not move to some of the challenges people come to. Just to add to that. Yes. There are various levels of interest in land. Yeah. So that when we use ownership, for instance, you are dealing with various things. People may have interests that are limited in time. Yes. From 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. You need to investigate all of that. So it's just something to add to. So you can only give or convey what you have once again. If your interest is for 20 years, you can only give to that point, but not beyond. Not beyond. I think just to throw a bit light on that, because the Constitution says no one can own interest, leasehold interest of more than 99 years. That's for a citizen. Yes, for a citizen of Ghana. Foreigners is limited. Foreigners is limited to 50 years. Yes. Now, what happens is that someone may have acquired that 99 years, yes, used it for a period, or may hold it for a period before you go into acquire. So you can only have the remaining period that is left. That is left. So if he had it for 99 years and 40 years has already elapsed, you're looking just 59 years. Exactly. Exactly. So people have to also check that original, if there's documentation to that effect, yes. Because if it is a lease, of course, there should have been some documentation. Absolutely. You have to check it, and not just buy because you've seen a document. You have to check what is left over of that person's interest. Exactly. Is it just 10 years? Before you buy it thinking you'll be there, and then after 10 years, somebody comes to you to, to disturb your peace. Disturb you, yes. Yeah. If you're getting a conveyance from the state, yes, for instance, you're getting good title, or you get a document, that
shows that is more than 30 years old
Yes.
and establishes the right of the vendor to dispose of it.
Yes.
That's also good. Or that arises from a court judgment. You're fairly safe with that.
Yes.
In your search, you might not find anything of the sort.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go to the Lands Commission and the report you get is that this site has not been subject to any previously recorded transaction.
Yes.
Now, what that means is that nobody has bothered to
register or
anything.
regularize the title.
Yes. Now, that is where some difficulty
It becomes
arises.
a free for all because anybody can now emerge and say it's my land.
Exactly. And you will find many of that. Like he said before, it is very, very important when you're getting a piece of land to go on there and then try and speak to as many people, your neighbors, your prospective neighbors, and then people in the vicinity,
Yeah.
So that you're sure in your head what you're getting. Sometimes you go and then, sometimes you go, someone has put on a piece of some sand or something of the sort on the
Building
property.
blocks.
It ought to raise for you some red flags. So these are all things to
Or you get there,
watch
you
out for.
find economic trees like mangoes, cocoa,
Exactly.
things that have to be intentionally put there.
Then
You should know there's been some activity there.
Absolutely.
So you have to make sure you're dealing with the right people, or there's a wall built around that land.
So I think that's constructive notice.
Yes, that's certainly. And so
notice that somebody else owns this land.
And so when we're talking about the title,
Yes.
these are all considerations of the person's title.
Let's move on to the everyday challenges people face
Right.
when they've bought land. One of the commonest is double sale. They sell to you and they sell to another person. Then it now becomes a problem of who was first in time, who has invested more. And sometimes what people do is to quickly develop when they have the financial muscle. So Adam buys the property first, the land. You buy it maybe some 10 years later or 2 years later. But because you have more money, you quickly develop it so that whatever happens, they would say, okay, you have invested more in the land.
I think this leads us to some of these maxims of equity.
Yes.
First one says where the equities are equal, the first in time prevails.
Exactly.
So that's where both parties only hold equitable interest in the land.
Yes.
In this case, we are talking about a situation where neither of them has registered or has gone on to convert that equitable interest into a legal interest by acquiring a land certificate.
Mm-hmm.
Then the first in time should prevail.
Yes.
But then where you have one converting his to a legal interest, then the legal interest should prevail over.
I think you have to break this down further because it sounds really technical. I am okay, but the main essence is the viewer at home.
I mean, if we're talking to the viewer at home,
yes,
what I'll say is that possession is key.
Possession?
Yes. When you go to buy a piece of land, make sure you possess it.
The question is, what is possession? Control.
Well, you have to put the land. You have to put the land within your control.
Yes.
Do something on the land.
You have to go on the land.
You have to go on the land
and show evidence that you are on the land.
Absolutely.
And it is yours.
Absolutely.
You could build a wall. You could plant a tree.
It's always the best. Yeah. And these double sales and things, they arise principally from the long drawn out process of acquiring the land.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're paying piecemeal.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting your indenture yet because somebody else, probably because somebody's not doing what they're supposed to do, or probably they expect you to put up some money that you haven't put up, and then they are always looking out for someone who comes up with a high amount of money.
Yeah.
So they think, although we've taken your money,
we can pay
I've
you
taken
back.
1,000 cedis from you. This man is giving me 2,000. I can easily give you back your 1,000 cedis, and then I get 1,000 cedis extra. So you really, really, really. That's why, like we said before, you have to get in a lawyer to lock in the transaction.
Yeah.
If you don't really lock it in, then you expose yourself to these kinds of things. Another thing, sometimes you would have bought it already, but you've left the land for so long. Probably not bothered to go register your title.
And you don't go there ever.
And then you don't go there ever. Next time you go, there's a nice, there's a
building
nice
on it.
two-story building on it with a family living
I
in
think
it.
with that, what I've realized these days is that some of these landowners, through their frequent court trials, they are learning some of these things. And I realized that some people put in the indenture that if after 2 years you fail to develop the land,
they can repossess
they can repossess the land. And
I think I've spotted that a couple of times.
They are using some of these clauses that are hidden in the indenture.
And also insisting on the use of the land, so that if you say you're acquiring it for residential purposes, and later you are building a factory, then they come after you.
Exactly. So it's very important to, put something on the land. I mean, put something, give it a short wall, throughout. Some people do corner pillars.
Just show evidence that somebody is here.
Yes, I mean, you help each other, because I don't think all those who do the second sale come in with a bad intention.
Absolutely.
They go, they are shown a bare, parcel of land.
They've done their searches, nothing shows.
And there's nothing, and then they just go in and buy. So at least you even help that person if you have something on the land.
But let's not
to give that person notice that, hey, I'm already here.
Let's not take away the fact that there are some people who know actually, but then they want that particular land, and they must have it, and they have the financial muscle. So he's going to buy the land and wait. Whenever you come up, they can always settle it.
Well, I'll not discount that. But
yes,
I'll not discount that.
You probably will have to assume that every person is.
There is something some people do. So you bought the land, you didn't develop it, you didn't leave evidence, and it's not registered. Then somebody else comes, he buys the land in good faith, he starts to develop his building, and you go and pull it down. It happens so often. After somebody else has put in all his investments into raising a structure to lay his head. Then you wake up and it's like, I own this land and I've had it for, it may be true, but then the surest thing he can do is to pull it down instead of thinking of negotiating. Don't you think that is a bit extreme? Some people think that's the best way to safeguard their land.
In the first place, you cannot do that. That's
it's illegal. But then it happens.
We do not live in the
jungle.
It
happens.
So once you do that, you've conducted an illegality.
Yeah.
So there's no dispute over that. It happens and it's wrong.
A whole lot.
It happens and it's wrong.
You see, the truth is that even when you detect an illegality on your land, you don't have the right to go in and demolish. You need to go to the authorities and get a declaration
of
that
title.
Indeed, title
and an injunction where it's still ongoing.
Yes, to stop them, at least an interlocutory injunction till the determination of the suit.
But some people are of the opinion that if I leave the land there, the building on it, and eventually the court rules that it's your land. But you see, the land is worth 10,000. The structure on the land is worth 200,000. Clearly, this person has invested more. Why don't you just let him pay you off? That is some people's genuine fear.
That is,
and for which reason they would prefer to rather pull it down, so that at the end of the day you are all at par, and whoever now wins gets it. You see, but what if at the end of the day the one who developed the land is actually the real owner of the land?
Wait a minute. The court, the consideration for the court is that at the time that the person was doing the development, okay, if there's evidence
that he knew
that you sat back and
and
allowed this person to do that, then clearly you cannot come back seeking to claim it, because the land includes everything on the land, like we said before. So it is not so much the fact that someone has invested 200 million or so much on a land that is worth just 10 million. It is your conduct when the person was developing that becomes important. Mind you, there's also the issue of limitation, which tells us that if the person adversely possesses it after 12 years, then you can't go on to the land.
So by adverse possession, we're talking about a situation where somebody else who does not own the land actually develops it or goes on the land and uses the land for 12 years. Even a squatter, undisturbed. Undisturbed.
Well, not just that. The person who's on the land must do so in the belief that he owns it. You see, if with your permission somebody goes onto your land for instance, you just allow some tenants at will to go onto your land. They can't say that because we've been on the land for 12 years.
But what about squatters? The squatter knows it's not his land. But even after 12 years, it becomes a big deal to take the person off. So even with people that you let on your land, it's good that from time to time you remind them of the fact that this is my land. Because after the 12 years, they can make a case.
That is why you always have to make them give to you some consideration.
Yeah, even if it's something small, peppercorn rinds.
Yes,
exactly.
It's very important.
Those are incidents of ownership. You really have to. It's part
of control. You are the landlord.
It's part of control. It's part of control, and you mustn't let go of control of the land. But it is important, like we said before, that if anybody goes onto your land and is developing the land, you take reasonably quick steps to stop
the process or stop it. Yes.
Because, like you said, besides issuing a writ in court for a declaration to title, there are interim measures like the injunction, that you can always seek. And if the injunction is granted and the person continues to build,
even while the injunction application is pending, it has the effect,
very well, yes,
of stopping the development until it happens, lest they get in for contempt.
Exactly. Yeah. Once the application is served on you, it's as good as the injunction being granted.
Yeah.
So once the application is served on you, you have to stop.
Then you have notice of that challenge.
Exactly. You have to stop whatever you are doing. Go to court and then fight it out.
So those who are in the habit of, you've been served with an application for an injunction and you're developing the land and all of a sudden they go and rent lights and they are working day and night quickly to finish the project so that they make useless the application, they could go in for contempt. And this,
that's really another matter. That's really another matter. And the thing is that you are aware that somebody else is challenging your title to the land.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how quickly you go on to develop. If it's not yours, the court is not going to say that because you finished building, it's yours. You see, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That, sometimes you bring the application, whether the court grants it or not, it's to show that at this stage that I started complaining of the land, probably the person had only gone onto the land and put on sand and stones. By the time we finish with the case, the person has built a 4-story building. It's not his, it's not his. The court is not going to say that because he has finished building, it is his. So often, and I notice that people often worry about that.
Some people also are concerned about who suffers the most. The one who invested so much in good faith. So sometimes because of that,
when you say that, you've introduced another element.
In the name of equity,
you've introduced
let's
another
be fair.
element.
So they go like, once you have developed, let's negotiate something.
This farmer nyame attitude of Ghanaians, one way or the other, because there are instances where now after the case, the one who did not build is triumphant. You get a situation where they now come and they want to sit down and talk.
Yes.
I've put up this huge thing on the land, why don't you
just...
So let's see if I can atone tenancy to you.
But you see, that is okay if you haven't substantially changed the state of the land. For instance, if you now build a fuel filling station, which has underground tanks and all of that, it's changed the land, especially where you want it's for residential purposes. It changes the form of the land.
I need to say, you mentioned the issue of good faith.
Yes.
And we spoke about this before, that sometimes because of the nature of a land tenure, where people go onto the land not knowing that someone else has acquired a previous interest, that's when you can mention that he probably has taken it in good faith, and it's a matter when it goes to court for evidence to show. Because the person will be saying, I bought the land and I exercised acts of and therefore you are aware that somebody owned it. You understand? The other person, when I went to, it was free, there was nobody there, I conducted my searches, I did this, I started developing, nobody came to stop me.
Yeah.
So those are, good faith is not just something you bandy about, it's a matter of evidence.
Yes.
Okay. So if indeed the court decides that the person has bought a land in good faith, then that's the decision of the court. Otherwise, you know, there's no issue of good faith when you've gone to take somebody's land and put a four-story building.
And you know very well that
yes.
it's his land. Actually, he had a wall, you push it down.
Of this famous case of is it Amuzu and Oklika,
right?
Where
right.
Yes, the guy goes, he wants to purchase the land, and then there was, I think the defendant was already on the land.
Already on the land.
Yes, and then he even took him round to show him the adjoining land.
Exactly.
Now this guy goes behind him and then acquires the land, including
the one he lives on.
And he goes ahead, registers the land, acquires the land certificate.
And so to say that
yes,
once he has a certificate, he now owns the land.
But the court said no, fraud vitiates all.
Yeah.
And once you acquired it fraudulently, you do not acquire a better title. No. So yes, good faith is very important, like Kweku was saying. Good faith is
it's also important to mention here that where you have genuinely acquired land from a landlord, and you one day wake up to challenge your landlord's ownership of the land, you have acted in a way that will make the landlord take the land away from you. And that is where forfeiture comes in. Yes, you bought the land, you paid for it, and then maybe there's a lease agreement, and then you wake up one day, maybe your landlord is in dispute with another person over title, and you decide to join the other person, and then position yourself in a way that suggests that you do not believe that your landlord owns that land, and you actually take steps to challenge your landlord's ownership of the land.
Okay.
You can forfeit your title.
Okay. Yeah. What I'll say about that very briefly is that if you acquire a lease, it is actually exclusive. It's actually exclusive possession for a limited
period of time. Yes.
So probably that situation would not.
It comes mostly in tenancy issues.
Yes.
But then because we're discussing land, sometimes you can take the land for a period. It's not technically a lease.
Yes.
It's some form of rental, but because it's a protracted period, it operates as a lease.
It's a lease anyway.
Yes, so where you now challenge your landlord, you can forfeit it.
Absolutely. I mean,
and then they re-enter
if you're paying rent,
if you're paying rent
to me, and then you decide one day that now you have 10 landowners, so you're no longer going to pay rent, that challenges my ownership or my title to the land. And for that, clearly, for any landowner, that's an important thing that he has to take up. Because if you don't take it up, then you've lost the control that we spoke of earlier.
Still to come on Law Express.
The courts of equity have come up with the principle that in land cases, like a court can decree specific performance because no two parcels of land are the same.
And by specific performance, we're talking about, insisting that make sure you give the person the land.
The very land
you have
that
to
he
follow.
negotiated.
Yes, you have to follow through on your promise or on the contract of sale, whichever it be.
So depending on the situation, after you have explained to your lawyer, I'm sure your lawyer will be in the best position to advise you as to what to do.
I think at this juncture we could quickly run over what you should do once again, though we've been discussing that the entire time. What should you do in a step-by-step order? I don't know if Adam would like to do that.
Yes.
For people who are just joining us at this point.
Generally, the very first thing is due diligence, due diligence, due diligence. And by due diligence, we're talking about undertaking the investigation of the ownership of the land. Who is the owner of the land? In fact, sometimes you even have to investigate the reputation of the owners of the land.
Is he a known fraudster?
Is he a known fraudster? Is he somebody who's known for engaging in multiple
sales
of lands? And then also the title of the land. What kind of title has he got? Second, you have to do searches, the appropriate searches at the Land Commission. There are various divisions of the Land Commission, Survey and Mapping Division, and then land title registration. I think these are very two. I learned that most of the time, if your search at the Survey and Mapping Division proves negative, then you could go on ahead. Also, it's important to obtain a cadastral plan.
Yes.
Cadastral plan of the area, and then to know who is owns the larger tract of land and the various conveyances that have gone on under that. It's also important to hire an independent surveyor to make sure that yes, the site plan that you have given is actually are the ones on the field, because there are times where there will be discrepancies and you would have two litigants fighting over two distinct or separate parcels of land. Also, yes, the leasehold, they have to check if the remainder, if I should put it that way, because person might have acquired a 99-year lease and he has also either sublet it or has given you a sublease of the remainder or has assigned the remainder to you.
You may also want to reduce everything into a contract for sale.
A contract of sale is also very important. And that's where you need a lawyer. And
from actually the very top.
You probably need a lawyer right from
the very start.
Right from the start.
I mean, if the land is of value, and you cannot afford to invest in a lawyer for a huge transaction that you're about to embark. I mean, you're going to buy a land. It's more than, it's worth hundreds of thousands of Ghana cedis. And then you decide that you don't want to spend some little percentage of that on a lawyer. Then you end up losing everything.
Yes.
Isn't it better to get somebody who would be
well, if we keep insisting, someone might think we're trying to advertise for lawyers.
Far from that. The main aim is just education.
It's important. It's very, very important.
No, it's because of the nature, how often these things happen.
The truth is that
it happens all the time.
eventually end up with a lawyer anyway.
And like I said before, often people only think of lawyers
when there's trouble.
But the old adage goes, a stitch in time saves nine. So there's you can't overstate that. It's very, very important.
And then I think so after everything is you have gone through with everything, the sale is perfected. Now you go to registration of the land. And which you do
there
at
you
the
would
land
need somebody
commission.
to take care of for you.
Yes, you mostly. And there's this thing I need to correct. This issue about a yellow paper.
Yellow card.
Yes, a yellow card. And I have a yellow card.
I have a yellow card.
They sometimes go to sleep because they think they have a yellow card.
The yellow card is out.
The yellow card is just like one of the first stages.
Just an acknowledgement that your application.
You are in the system.
Yes,
exactly. And they have a reference number.
Yes.
And that's all you need to track the remaining
process of
Exactly. and then it can take some time, up to about 6 months if everything goes well for you to get a land certificate. And I think you should not rest until you have received your land certificate in your hands.
One other thing that we need to mention is the issue of stamp duty.
Okay.
The state has to get its revenue.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you explain stamp duty?
Well, within 2 months of execution of any
lease
contract for any contract of assignment or lease or whatever, you need to go to the land valuation board and then pay about 1% on the value of the property to the state. Now that's a tax.
Yes.
Okay. But you see, that's a condition precedent to having it registered.
Yes.
If you don't do it, you can't have the land registered. So it's important that we...
And there's actually a penalty for not doing it timeously.
Then
they'll calculate all the years for which you did not do it. And it's evidenced by some stamps, on the face of your documents, your title. Yes.
When you go to Lands Commission and you haven't done that, they would actually ask you
and mind you, if you don't pay the stamp duty, if you go and show up your document in court, it might actually not be admitted.
Oh yes, I've thrown out a piece of evidence like that, over stamp duty.
It's key.
It really is
the state protects
a very strong
money.
point.
So so that's important. For registration, you go through the process. Go to the Lands Commission, you get your yellow card, which is not proof that you have a registered title.
Just to prove that you are in the process.
Just to prove that you're in the process. From there, you get your yellow card. You might be directed to the survey for a cadastral to be.
What would we say to somebody who is a victim of a multiple sale? Do you go back for a refund? Please give me, or you insist. Some people actually are very understandable. They would talk to the people and say, if you have something else somewhere, let me manage it.
You see, the thing is that the person, like you said before.
But people will ask, now I know that it's been a multiple sale then. I'm a victim. There's been some fraud here. What should you do? Should you go to the police? Should you sue in court?
Well, there's actually a crime to indulge in that, and you can be prosecuted under the criminal code.
Yes.
For
for the fraud element.
Yeah.
But then in order to refund and recoup your investments.
But for a person who invests money, then you probably sue to have.
So see
that's
a lawyer.
A civil action. Just see a lawyer and then you go through the processes.
What
about if you decide to go and approach them and say, Jack, can I have my money back? Well, if you're lucky to have it back, because mostly the money is long gone.
That's the problem. That's the problem. Because I'm sure if many people could have their monies back, they would not.
Yeah, they would just take it.
Because I know people who, for many years after payments, have been they are promised every day. Oh, we have another land at this place. We'll take you. Then, in the hope that, you see, some people are just so gullible. He's deceived you once, or they have deceived you once. But then the person is desperate because they just want land. They want somewhere to lay their heads and take care of their family. So the person keeps saying, oh, we have another one here, so you don't worry. If he's taken here, we'll give you. And for many years, you keep following for the land that you never get.
Well, you see, Noella, like I said, it depends on, are you the person who bought it the second time, or are you the one who bought it first?
First, yes.
You know, all these, there may be intricacies that you need to explain to your lawyer, for your lawyer to advise you. Yeah. But I think basically the courts of equity have come up with the principle that in land cases, like, a court can decree specific performance because no two parcels of land are the same.
And by specific performance, we're talking about, insisting that make sure you give the person the land.
The very land
you have
that
to
he
follow.
negotiated.
Yes, you have to follow through on your promise or on the contract of sale, whichever it be.
Yeah. So depending on the situation, after you have explained to your lawyer, I'm sure your lawyer will be in the best position to advise you as to what to do.
Land issues are so rife. They affect almost everybody in our society now because it's a valuable investment that every citizen has plans of owning one day or the other. Today you've been listening to two private legal practitioners. You've been listening to Kweku Osayasari and then Philip Edem Kusianyu. My name is Noella Seidu and this has been our show, Law Express. Make a date with us same time next week. Goodbye.